Hey, hey, what? Of course. How's it going, fam? How you doing, fam? What's going on, fam? Yeah, no, I said I would grow a beard until Dims did something right. Yeah, ZZ Top. ZZ Top. So PAYGO is an ultra conservative program that was created by conservatives that was pretty much abandoned by Democrats, even Reagan to an extent, sort of abandoned PAYGO, where you basically pay for projects and you pay for funding um, as you either A, have resources for it or have the budget for it, or B, if you cut from some other type of program. So, for example, we want to add $100 to the Medi-Cal system. Well, unless we have that $100 readily available, we would have to cut $100 from another program in order to fund that $100 toward the Medi-Cal program. Um, PAYGO is it's basically what it says. You pay as you go toward any sort of budget or finance options that you have in the state or at the federal government.
Right. So essentially, it makes something like Medicare for all pretty much impossible.
Oh yeah, I mean, not only impossible, but impractical. You know, because uh, they're basically saying that we would have to fund Medicare for all before we could even talk about passing it. Which we all know we spent $10 trillion on a war for oil. We're never going to be able to fund it up front or fund any projects up front.
Right.
Yeah,
It's a
but
cop out.
isn't there a provision in the bill itself or in the law itself that says if they do like a bill or something like an infrastructure bill or Medicare for all, they could forego with the PAYGO? So isn't it just really more symbolic?
Not really, because I mean, if you take a look at what Dems are famous for doing, anyways, they're famous for doing what their donors tell them to do. So they're only, if there is anything in the system, they only did it so oil companies or someone could get around doing their projects. They're not going to do it for the goodwill of the public. They're not going to forego any sort of provision so we can get Medicare for all. They're not going to forego a provision so we can have tuition-free college. They're going to forego a provision to let Texaco drill somewhere or let Chevron drill somewhere or do something that one of their donors let them do.
So why did Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats push for it?
Well, rumor I'm hearing is that that she's a progressive now, and this is supposed to be a progressive bill. So no, they put out some BS out there that said that the reason why they put it out there is because it condenses power or something like that, and it actually lets the Dems pick where they're going to be putting money and where they're going to be spending money. There was some sort of spin about it like that.
Yeah.
Honestly, when it comes down to it, I think the only reason why they did it is because they're anti-wall and they're anti anything having to do with the wall, which isn't necessarily a bad thing either. But what are you going to sacrifice in order to try and condense as much of the little power that you have right now between the three houses?
Exactly. Exactly.
I
So,
mean,
or
realistically, if the Democrats, the establishment Democrats or the Blue Dogs or whatever they're called nowadays, if they were really progressive, shouldn't Nancy Pelosi take Medicare for all, pass it in the House, and then put it in front of the Senate's face and say, okay, now, really put them to a bluff or, just make them be known who's going to not support these bills. If they were progressive, shouldn't they do a move like that?
simple answer, pasta. Yes. More complicated answer. I remember when she was sitting down with the meltdown with Schumer and Trump, where Trump was basically saying that he wasn't going to pass any sort of budgets through the House because it wasn't going to get approved through the Senate. And Pelosi kept sitting there nagging him, well,
Yeah,
why don't you pass it through the House and set a precedent for what you want? And Trump kept saying, because I don't have the votes in the Senate, I'm not going to waste my time. Well, just pass it in the House and set a precedent.
exactly.
But but when you ask her why she doesn't do it, she says it's because she can't get the votes in the Senate.
Yeah.
So that's exactly why she's not passing it through the House, is because she doesn't have the votes in the Senate, and they know they're not going to get the votes in the Senate. So
Yeah.
So this is all just another spineless move by the Democrats. It just shows that they're pretty conservative right now, and with their with everything. And it's really sad that only 3 people said no on PAYGO. That was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ro Khanna, and Tulsi Gabbard, including all the incoming freshmen, including all the quote unquote progressives that were coming in. Only those 3 stood their ground. And that just shows us, I think, that we need more of those people in the party, because three votes isn't going to get you anywhere. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not shocked that the 3 that voted against it were the 3.
Yeah.
To the incoming freshmen, I can't hold it against them yet. I mean, number one, not yet. And the reason why is because there's multiple factors involved. Number one, they didn't have they really, with the incoming freshmen, they still didn't have enough votes to block it yet. They needed, I think, 18 votes, and I think we only have about 9 progressives in Congress right now, anyways. Yeah. So none of the incoming freshmen could have blocked it. So I can see them as, quote unquote, caving in. That way they can get some actual work done with some other bills. And number 2, we also do have to keep in mind, when we say they're freshmen, they are freshmen. None of these people were elected officials before. I mean, we have people that were former bartenders. We have people that worked at nonprofits. We have people that they never really had any jobs. They just got out of college, and they were community activists. They ran for Congress and got elected. Yeah. So there might be a little green to them when it comes to writing the bills, or could have been that they were manipulated. Maybe that spin that they tried passing to the public, they had these back office conversations with them, and they said, oh, no, this is going to be a good thing. It's going to be a good thing. And maybe they thought it was a good thing.
But, to me, I mean, can't these people see, can't they put their hand or their finger on the pulse? To me, it's all about Ro Khanna, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Tulsi Gabbard understanding what the populace and the mainstream media people really want and standing for something. Isn't this really going to hurt these Democrats, these new freshman Democrats, who were put there, by the way, to go and stand up to the establishment, not to bow down to it? Can't they see that this is going to hurt their future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they do realize that. I think now they realize that it could hurt them. I think a lot of them are seeing that there were 3 that stood up for what was right, and the rest of them didn't. And but like I said, you brought up a good point, Pasa. You said, do they have their finger on the pulse? All 3 of those people that you mentioned, Tulsi Gabbard, Ocasio-Cortez, and Ro Khanna, all 3 of them meet with their community. All 3 of them, when we have a convention here in California, they show up to the convention, and those are the only elected officials that come talk to the Progressive Caucus. Yeah. They're the only ones that show up to progressive events. So yeah, of course they have their finger on the pulse. The rest of them, I'm not sure. I mean, they were really good at, being promoted by Our Revolution and being promoted by Justice Democrats. But at the end of the day, what do we really know about them? We don't know much about them because they're not out on the scene like the same way that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is.
Exactly. And that's like one of the reasons why I like pushing for a sort of community organizer or an activist coming into Congress, because those are the people that do have a pulse on what the working people need, on what's actually needed on the streets. And they're not just going to forget about it when they come into Congress and have a nice seat at the table. So that's essentially why I'm extremely pro supporting organizers who are going to have a very solid take on what needs to be done.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic point, Fiorella. If you don't have that contact person to get the message back to them, what are we even doing? We might as well have just elected the same people we elected before if the messages aren't being heard.
Yeah. I can think of an activist down in San Diego that's doing a lot of great work out there that has ran for office before, and I hope he runs again. And I think it's a great transition into the toilet talk or the scuttlebutt talk or whatever they call it, the back room talk, the in the bubble talk. James Elia, whatever you want to be called. Give us some good information. Who's going to win this California Democratic chair?
So, who's gonna win? Who knows? We have three declared candidates. Daraka Larimore Hall announced today. Kimberly Ellis announced about a week or 2 weeks ago, and Lenore Albert also announced. And for those of you who don't know Lenore, she is the craziest person in California. um, she had a whopping 7 votes the last time, and I think she won't pass that number this time. So, really, right now at this point, we have Daraka and we have Kimberly Ellis. If it was head to head, Daraka versus Kimberly Ellis, I'm definitely giving it to Kimberly Ellis. I think that Kimberly was very smart after the last election. She made a lot of really good relationships with legislators and lawmakers and stuff like that, and she realized that